Morning, we're hot dropping live. It's Spartan John. We're early actually by like maybe a minute. I'm still doing announcements, so you're just gonna have to deal with it. But hey, good morning. Um, post. How are you guys today? Thanks for hanging out with us. Well, that's looking tasty, Martin. Oh. Yo. I'm just sending out my all my stuff here so we can get going. Just putting out the announcements, waiting for people to show up. Good morning, everybody. For anybody who's stopping by for the first time, my name is Spartan John. You can call me John. 117. I wear the armor. There it is. The cosplay is Master Chief. I'm the Pineapple Chief in the 405. I'm a Halo gamer. I'm a older Halo gamer. I was here when CE came out the first time. You know, when it wasn't, when it was just Halo Combat Evolved. Before the Game of the Year edition, I was there. And I've just stood the watch, and I love Halo. So come and be awesome with us. I mean, you know, I'll tell you all about it. Shit. The trains are already going off the track. Holy fuck, I'm just trying to get started and I can't even figure out where I'm at. Ah! Oh, that's right, I'm making Discord announcements. Holy cow, sometimes I gotta remember. I have a hard time sometimes. I don't know what's going on lately. This is it, right here. This is the post at everyone. Here we go. Apple C. Oh, that was still scheisse. Let's see, there we go. This is not the competitive tools. It'll be. There we go. Kapow chow. Send now. Publish. Confirm. Got it. We're making it happen. 2 weeks old when it originally launched. Oof. See, you're making me feel the old. Making me feel the old. Like I can't even begin to tell you. It's unfathomable, actually, the age that I feel. It's terrible. 2 more. Ka-chow. 1 more. Ka-chow. That's right. We're all about those ka-chows today. All right, so for everybody that missed it, I think I had already like busted up my ankle on Tuesday. It's feeling pretty good today. I'm gonna go golfing tomorrow. I think it's gonna be all right actually. So we're feeling okay there. That's it. That's all the updates. I didn't do shit for like the last couple of days because my ankle's been like out. As a matter of fact, yesterday I hung out in the Discord for just a little bit with Kat and Dust, who frequent the stream live sometimes, and they both were just talking to me. I think I might have even fell asleep. I was just trying to feel, better. So, yeah. And then... And then here we go. Here's the spiel. If you just stumbled across me for the first time, these are the ways that you can find me. If you want to join the Discord, there it is. It's absolutely free. You get unfettered access to people like Foamforge Cosplay, to people like me. You just come and join it. Be part of the community. We're a bunch of cosplayers. We're a really good group. It's all about community. It's about acceptance. It's about building each other up. It's about adding value. There are always dipshits, but I feel like there are less of them in my server. So come and be part of that. It's awesome. And it could be, you could be part of it too. Always a fire team to be found. We're global. There are people all around the world that are part of the awesome. And, that's one of the things that makes me the happiest about it. So come and be part of that. I want to say thank you to everybody for 230 followers now, up to 230. That is like, we are powering the awesome. Every single one of you is just investing back, and it's like, it's like bright, and it feels amazing. It's like uplifting and good. Thank you. Don't stop. Keep being awesome with us. 51 subs. We're on a goal. We got a goal of 80. We're at 51. You guys are awesome. Thank you for helping. Thank you for being part of it. Thank you for contributing. Okay. Friends. We have a lot of friends. Some of them support us directly in the channel. Installation 00, Foamforge Cosplay, and of course Camishep on Twitch. You can also check him out on TikTok. He is awesome. You can follow those guys there. They're cool. They support us if you like to follow people. And that leads me to the last thing. We're hosting tournaments. We host tournaments in the Spartan space for Installation 00 and for their Halo tournaments. Our friend at Foamforge Cosplay is the person that conducts and manages the tournaments, and we do them in effort to fundraise for his Extra Life. If you want to donate outside of a tournament, you can click on that link right there, and it will take you to his Reclaimers team page, and you can donate. You can donate $1. If 1 million people donate $1, $1 million will go to some sick kids at the Edmonton Children's Stollery in YEG. Cool deal. Go do it if you can. And if you can't, it's okay. If you want to join in any of the tournaments, you have to donate via that link. More details to come. There are 4 versus 4 team tournaments that are coming up for Halo. They will be in July and in September. And there is a singles tournament on May 25th that we're hosting here in the Spartan space. Come and be part of it. It's singles. It's 1v1, 16 players, round robin tournament. That is the 25th of May, and I believe you need to register by donation to the Extra Life. I will find out that information, or you can join the Discord and find out yourself. Thank you so much for listening, and you guys are awesome for that. Today's OST is provided by Installation 00 on YouTube, Ambient Wonders. My plug for Ambient Wonders is... he's up to 1,610 subscribers-ish. He started at 840. Go like it, listen to it, and sub. It's mostly Halo music, but it's becoming more expansive. And it's just ambient sounds from games and from menus. And all of the places. It's good for listening to when you're sad, good for listening to when you're happy, good for listening to if you just want some ambiance at your dinner or in your home when you're just there. It's nice for studying. It's nice and relaxing, some of it, if you just want to relax. Ambient Wonders, I listen to it all the time. And let's see, OST. Hey, check it out. Since we're all reading the Flood today, we all know that we read on Thursdays. We read The Fall of Reach. So if you stumble across this for the first time today, and you are hearing us read and you want to hear more, we are on a journey through the Halo series of books for the very first time together. You get to hear me read it and see my authentic reaction, and you get to learn more about the lore and hear about that. And the hope is that, it'll inspire you to be a bigger part of the community and love Halo as much as we do. So anyway, that's The Fall of Reach. You can go and listen to that. It's about 13 episodes, and it'll be just like today. Usually about 15 minutes into the stream, I start reading. And then after I do that, I move right on to gaming or cosplay crafting or whatever it is. Lately, it's been a lot of gaming. But we are going to switch that up at some point soon because I've got a lot of cosplay stuff I need to get done for the next convention. But the point is that you can you could go listen to that. Listen to the first hour if you're done, or hour and a half or so if you're done listening to the book. Just don't want to listen to me play games because you can't, or don't want to watch it or whatever. Skip on to the next episode, and you can be enriched by decent science fiction with a terrible but getting better reader. And then once again, if you're stumbling upon us, we also are currently reading The Flood, and you can go right there. You can catch up all of the episodes. We're on episode 10 today. Couple other things. I'm sure you're all on Twitch. I'm sure you know. If you're not, if this is your first time on Twitch, welcome. Hi, I'm glad you found me. We spread and share awesome here. That's what you collect. So just for being part of the group on Twitch, you collect the awesome. You can use that on emotes. You can make me wear my armor. You can make me wear a helmet and a chest plate while I'm playing a game of Halo. You can do a bunch of cool stuff. So check that out. Be interactive. Be a part of the community. The more fun that you have, the more fun I have. Okay? Anyway, thanks. You guys are the best. And, so settle down, get your cup of coffee, and we're gonna get into this. Here's the bookmark. Everybody knows that we show the bookmark at the beginning so that when Spartan John learns how to edit, or if he already, thank you, I will do that. Everybody knows that we show the bookmark because when Spartan John figures out how to edit, then we'll go and edit the books down into just the books so that you can just listen to the books. My plan is to have two versions of that. The edited version where it's only the book, and then the other version where it's me reading and all of the stuff that happens authentically during the stream, but then it's just me reading mostly and responding to the read. But anyway, yeah. Sorry, I'm just double checking. Oh, okay. Yeah, that tracks. All right, here we go. So we're going to get started. Here's the bookmark again, for editing purposes. If I ever learn how to edit, haha. We're on chapter 11. Chapter 11. Delta plus 73 34 16. Spartan 117. Mission clock. On board, the truth and reconciliation. He wasn't here, wasn't there, wasn't anywhere, insofar as the chief could tell, from within the strange never-never land of Halo's teleportation net. He couldn't see or hear anything, save a sense of dizzying velocity. The Spartan felt his body stitched back together, one molecule at a time. He saw snatches of what looked like the interior of a Covenant ship as bands of golden light strobed up and disappeared over his head. Something was wrong, and he was just starting to figure out what it was. The inside of the ship seemed to be upside down when he flipped head over heels and crashed into the deck. He'd materialized with his feet planted firmly on the corridor's ceiling. "Oh," Cortana exclaimed. "I see the coordinate data needs to be..." The chief came to his feet, slapped the general area where his implants were, and shook his head. The AI sounded contrite. "Right, sorry." "Never mind that," the Spartan said. "Give me a sit rep." She patched back into the Covenant computing systems. A much easier task now that they were aboard one of the enemy's warships. "The Covenant network is absolute chaos," she replied. "From what I've been able to piece together, the leadership ordered all ships to abandon Halo when they found the Flood. But they were too late. The Flood overwhelmed the cruiser and captured it." I assume he said that's bad. "The Covenant thinks so. They're terrified that the Flood will repair the ship and use it to escape from Halo. They sent a strike team to neutralize the Flood and prepare the ship for immediate departure." The chief peered down the corridor. The bulkheads were violet. Strange patterns, marbled-like material, like the oily sheen of a beetle's carapace. He started forward, but quickly came up short as a voice that verged on a groan came over his implants. "Chief, don't be a fool. Leave me." It was Keyes' voice. "Keyes Jacob, Captain, service number 019er28 TAC 199er12 TAC JK." He clung to the tether of his CNI carrier wave and heard familiar voices. An iron-hard, rasping male voice, a tart, warm female voice. He knew them. Was this another memory? He was struggling to dredge up new pieces of his past to delay the numbing advance of the alien presence in his mind. It was harder to maintain a grasp on who he was, as the various pieces of his life, the things that made him who he was, were stripped away one at a time. "Keyes Jacob, Captain, service number 019er28 TAC 199er12 TAC JK." The voices, they were talking about him. The Master Chief, the AI Cortana. He felt a sense of mounting panic. They shouldn't be here. The other grew stronger and pressed forward, eager to learn more about these creatures that were so important to the struggling prisoner who clung so stubbornly to the identity. "Keyes Jacob, Captain, service number 019er28 TAC 199er12 TAC JK." "Chief Cortana, you shouldn't have come. Don't be a fool. Leave me. Get out of here. Run." The presence descended, and he could feel its anticipation of victory. It wouldn't be long now. "Captain?" Cortana inquired desperately. "Captain, I've lost him." Neither one of them said anything further. The pain in Keyes' voice had been clear. All they could do was dive deeper into the ship and hope to find him. The chief passed through a hatch, noticed that the right bulkhead was splattered with Covenant blood, and figured a battle had been fought there. That meant he could expect to run into the Flood at any moment. As he continued down the passageway, his throat felt unusually dry. His heart beat a little bit faster, as his stomach muscles were tight. His suspicions were soon confirmed as he heard the sounds of battle, took a right, and saw that a firefight was underway at the far end of the corridor. He let the combatants go at it for a bit before moving in to cut the survivors down. From there, he took a left, followed by a right, and came to a hatch. It opened to reveal a black hole with jagged edges. Farther back beyond the drop-off, another firefight was underway. Analyzing data, Cortana said. This hole was caused by some sort of explosion. All I detect down there are pools of coolant. We should continue our search somewhere else. The AI's advice made sense, so the Spartan turned to retrace his steps. Then, as he took the first left, all hell broke loose. Cortana said, warning, threat levels increasing. And then, as if to prove her point, a mob of Flood came straight at him. He fired, retreated, and fired again. Carrier forms exploded in a welter of shattered flesh, severed tentacles, and green slime. Combat forms rushed forward, as if eager to die, danced under the impact of the 7.62 millimeter rounds, and flew apart. Infection forms skittered across the deck, leaped into the air, and shattered into flaps of flying flesh. But there were too many, far too many for one person to handle. And even the chief heard Cortana say something about the black hole he accidentally backed into. Fell about 20 meters and plunged feet first into a pond of liquid green. Not in the ship, but somewhere under it, on the surface below. The coolant was so cold that he could feel it through his armor. It was thick, to which made it more difficult to move. The Master Chief felt his boots hit the bottom, knew the weight of his armor would hold him in place, and marched up onto what had become a beach of sorts. The cavern was dark, lit mostly by the luminescent glow produced by the coolant itself, although streaks of plasma fire slashed back and forth up ahead, punctuated by the steady thud, thud, thud of an automatic weapon. "Let's get out of here," Cortana said, "and find another way back aboard the ship." He moved up towards the edge of the conflict and let the combatants hammer each other for a bit before lobbing a grenade into the mix, waiting for the body parts to fall and strafing what was left. Then, having moved forward, he was forced to fight his way through a series of narrow, body-strewn passageways, as what seemed like an inexhaustible supply of FUD forms came at him from every possible direction. Eventually, having made his way through grottos of coolant and past piles of corpses, Cortana said, "We should head this way, toward the ship's gravity lift," and the Spartan saw a nav pointer appear on his HUD. He followed the red arrow around a bend to a ledge above a coolant-filled basin. Even as he watched, a dozen carrier forms marched up out of the green lagoon to attack the group of hard-pressed Covenant soldiers. The Spartan knew there was no way in hell that he'd be able to force his way through that mess, turned, and made his way back down the trail. A sniper rifle, just one of hundreds of weapons scattered around the area, was half obscured by a headless combatant form. The petty officer removed the rifle, checked to ensure that it was loaded, and returned to the overlook. Then, careful to make each shot count, he opened fire. The elites, jackals, and grunts went down fairly easily. But the flood forms, especially the carriers, were practically impossible to kill with this particular weapon. With few exceptions, the heavy rounds seemed to pass right through the lumpy-looking bastards without causing any harm whatsoever. When all of the 14.5 millimeter ammo was gone, the chief went back for the shotgun, jumped into the green liquid, and waded up onto the shoreline. He heard an obscene sucking noise, saw an infection form trying to enter an elite's chest cavity, and blew both of them away. After that, there was more cleanup to do, as some combat forms took a run at the human and a flock of infection forms tried to roll him under. Repeated doses of shotgun fire turned out to be just what the doctor ordered. The area was soon littered with severed tentacles and scraps of wet flesh. A pitch-black passageway led him back to another pool, where he arrived just in time to see the flood overrun a shade and the elite who was seated at the controls. The Spartan began firing, already backpedaling, when the flood spotted him and hopped, waddled, and jumped forward. He fired, reloaded, and then fired again, always retreating, always on the defensive, always hoping for a respite. This wasn't the kind of fight Spartans were designed as offensive weapons, but ever since they'd landed on the ring, he'd been on the run. He had to find a way to take the offensive, and soon. There was no break in the endless wall of flood attackers. He fired until his weapons were empty, pried energy weapons out of the dead fingers, and fired those until they were dry. Finally, more by virtue of stubbornness than anything else, and having reacquired human weapons from dead combat forms, the Master Chief found himself standing all alone, rifle raised, with no one to shoot at. He felt a powerful sense of elation. He was alive. It was a moment he couldn't take time to enjoy. Eager to reboard the cruiser and find Captain Keyes, he made his way along the path he had been forced to surrender to the flood, passed the shade, rounded a bend, and saw a couple of dozen infection forms materialize out of the darkness ahead. A plasma grenade strobed the night, pulverized their bodies, and produced a satisfying boom. It was still echoing off of the canyon walls as the human eased his way through a narrow passage and emerged at one end of a hotly contested pool. About 50 meters away, the Covenant and Flood surged back and forth, traded fire with each other, and appeared to be on the verge of hand-to-tentacle combat. 2 well-thrown grenades cut the number of hostiles in half. The MA-5B took care of the rest. "There's the gravity lift," Cortana said. "It's still operational. That's our way back in." It sounded simple, but as the Master Chief looked up at the hill on which the lift was seated, well-aimed plasma fire lashed down to scorch the rock at his right elbow. It glowed as the human was forced to pull back, wait for a lull, and dash forward again. Looking ahead, he spotted the point where the group had hard-pressed Covenant were trying to bar a group of Flood from making their way up a path towards the top of the hill and the foot of the gravity lift. It was a last stand, and the Covenant knew it. They fought harder than he'd ever seen the aliens fight. He felt a moment of kinship with the Covenant soldiers. He stood and threw 2 grenades into the middle of the melee and waited for the twin explosions, and then went in shooting. An elite sent plasma stuttering into the night sky as he fell over backwards. A combat form swung a jackal's arm like a club, and a pair of infection forms rode a grunt down into the pool of coolant. It was madness, a scene straight from hell, and the human had little choice but to kill everything that moved. As the last bodies crumpled to the ground, the Spartan was free to follow the steady, rising path upward, turn to the right, and enter the lift's footprint. He felt static electricity crackle around his armor, and heard plasma shriek through the air as the distant Covenant took exception to his plans. Then the Chief was gone, pulled upward into the belly of the beast. Thanks for the sub. Keyes, Jacob. Yes, that was it, wasn't it? He couldn't remember. There was nothing left now but navigation protocols, defense plans, and a duty to keep them safe. A droning buzz filled his mind. He vaguely remembered hearing it before, but didn't know what it was. It pressed in, hungry. Metal rang under the boots as McKay jumped down off the last platform onto a huge metal grating. It shivered in response. The trip down from the mesa had taken more than 15 minutes. First, she had taken the still functional lift down to the point where she and her troops had forced their way into the butte, back when the Covenant still occupied it. Then transferred to the circular staircase, which, like the rifling inside of a gun barrel, wound its way down to the bottom of a shaft and the barrier under her feet. "Good to see you, ma'am," a private said as he materialized at her elbow. "Sergeant Lister would like to speak with you." McKay nodded, said thanks, and made her way over to the far side of the grating, where the so-called entry team were gathered into a tight little group next to an assemblage of equipment that had been lowered from above. A portable work light glowed at the very center of the assemblage and threw huge shadows up onto the walls around them. Bodies parted as McKay approached, and Lister, who was down on his hands and knees, jumped to his feet. 10 Hut? Everyone came to attention. McKay noticed the way that the long hours and constant stress had pared what little bit of extra flesh there was off the non-com's face, leaving it gaunt and haggard. As you were, how does it look? Any contacts? No, ma'am, Lister responded. Not yet. But take a look at this. A Navy tech directed a handheld spotlight down through the grating, and the officer knelt to get a better look. The stairs, which had ended on the far side of the platform, appeared to pick up again just below the grating and circled into the darkness below. Look at the metal, Lister prompted, and look at what's piled up on the stairs below. McKay looked, saw the thick metal cross pieces had been twisted out of shape, and saw a large pile of weapons below. No human ordnance, as far as she could tell, just Covenant, which was to say plasma weapons. With no cutting torches to call upon, not yet anyway, it looked as though the Flood had depleted at least 100 energy pistols and rifles in a futile attempt to cut their way through the gratings. Given some more time, say another day or two, they might have succeeded. You gotta give the bastards credit, McKay said grimly. They never give up. Well, neither do we. Let's cut this sucker open, go down, and lock the back door, Lister said. Ma'am, yes, ma'am. But there were none of the usual gung-ho responses from the others who stood around him. It was dark down there, and nightmares lay in wait. Once inside the Pillar of Autumn, Zamami and Yap Yap found conditions to be both better and worse than they had expected. Consistent with the Grunt's predictions, the officer in charge, an overworked elite named Ontomi, had been extremely glad to see them, and wasted little time placing Zamami in charge of 20 jackals with Yap Yap in command. That, plus the fact that the security detachment had a reasonable amount of supplies, including methane, meant the basic physical needs had been met. That was the good news. The bad news was that Zamami, now known as Huki Umami, lived in constant fear that the elite, who knew either him or the recently deceased commando he had decided to impersonate, would come along and reveal his true identity. Or that the prophets would somehow pluck the information out of thin air, as they were rumored to be able to do. These fears caused the officer to lay low, stay out of sight, and delegate most of his leadership responsibilities to Yap Yap. This would have been annoying, but acceptable, where a contingent of grunts was concerned, but was made a great deal more difficult by the fact that jackals saw themselves as being superior to gas suckers, and were anything but pleased when they found themselves reporting to Yap Yap. Then, as if to add to the grunts' woes, the Flood had located the Pillar of Autumn, and while they were unable to infiltrate the vessel via any of the maintenance ways that ran back and forth just below the Ringworld surface, they had become adept to entering the vessel through rents in its severely damaged hull. I believe that's supposed to be vents, but it says rents. The airlocks were where lifeboats had been docked, and on one memorable occasion via one of the Covenant's own patrols, which had been ambushed, turned into combat forms and sent back into the ship. The ruse had been detected, but only after some of the contaminated soldiers were inside the vessel. A few of them were still at large somewhere within the human vessel. As the Grunt and his group of surly jackals stood guard in the Autumn Shuttle Bay, a dropship loaded with supplies circled over the downed ship, asked for and received the necessary clearance, and swooped in for landing. Yap Yap eyed his recalcitrant troops, saw that 3 of them had drifted away from their pre-assigned positions and used his radio to herd them back. Jack, Bach, and Yeg, we have a shuttle coming in, focused on the dropship, not the area outside. The jackals were too smart to say anything over the radio, but the grunt knew they were grumbling among themselves as they returned to their various stations and the ship settled onto the blast-scarred deck. "Watch the personnel slots," Yap Yap cautioned his troops, referring to the small compartments that line the outside surfaces of the shuttle's twin hulls. They could be packed with flood. In spite of the resentment he felt, Bach touched a switch and opened all of the slots for inspection. A new security procedure instituted 3 days before. The compartments were empty. The jackals sniggered, and there was nothing Yap Yap could do but suffer through the indignity of it. With that formality out of the way, a crew of grunts moved in to unload supplies from the cargo compartments that lined the inside surface of the dropship's hull, and towed the heavy loaded anti-grav pallets out onto the deck. Then, with the unloading process complete, the shuttle rose on its grav field, turned towards the hatch, and passed out into the bright sunlight. The cargo crew checked the label on each cargo container to see where it was supposed to go, grabbed at one another, and were about to tow the pallets away when Yap Yap intervened. "Stop. I want you to open those cargo mods one more time, one at a time. Make sure they contain what they're supposed to. If the previous order had been unpopular, this one met without an out rebellion." As Bach decided to take Yap Yap on, "You're no elite. We're under orders to deliver this stuff now. If we're late, they'll take our heads." He paused and clicked his beak meaningfully. "And our kin will take yours, gas sucker." The jackals, of all whom were enjoying the interchange to the maximum, looked at each other and grinned. Zamami should have been there. Should have been giving these orders, and Yap Yap cursed the officer from the bottom of his heart. "No," he replied stubbornly. "Nothing leaves here until it's been checked. That's the new process. The elites were the ones who came up with it, not me. So open them up, and we'll get you and your crew out of here." The other alien grumbled, but knew the rule-happy elites would back Yap Yap, and turned to his crew. "All right, you heard, Field Master Gas Sucker. Let's get this over with." Yap Yap sighed, ordered his jackals to form a giant U with the open end towards the cargo containers, and took his own place in the line. What ensued was boring to say the least, as each cargo module was opened, closed, and towed out of the way. Finally, with only 3 containers left to go, Bach undogged a hatch, pulled the door open, and disappeared under an avalanche of infection forms. One of the attacking pods grabbed onto the jackal's head, wrapped its tentacles around the creature's skull, drove a penetrator down through his throat, and had already tapped into the soldier's spine by the time Yap Yap yelled fire and the rest of the jackals opened up. Nothing could live where the 20 plasma beams converged, and most of the infection forms were dead within 2 or 3 heartbeats. But Yap Yap thought he detected motion behind the mists created by the exploding pus pods, and lobbed a plasma grenade into the cargo module. There was a flash of green and yellow light as the device went off, followed by a resonant boom as it detonated. The cargo container shook like a thing possessed, and chunks of raw meat flew out to spray the deck with gore. It was clear that 3 or maybe even 4 combat forms had been hiding in the cargo compartment, hoping to enter the ship. Now, as the last of the infection forms popped, a momentary silence settled over the shuttle bay. Bach's corpse smoldered on the deck. "That was close," the Jackal Jack said. "Those stupid gassers damn near got us killed. Good thing our file leader kept him in line." The soldiers to the other side of the former critic nodded solemnly. Yap Yap, who was close enough to hear the comment, wasn't sure whether to be angry or pleased. Somehow, for better or for worse, he'd been elevated to the position of honorary jackal. A full company of heavily armed Marines waited as torches cut through the metal gratings. Sparks fell into the Stygian blackness below, and each man or woman considered what awaited for them. Would they survive, or leave their bodies in the bottom of the hole? There was no way to know. Meanwhile, 30 meters away, two officers stood by themselves. McKay had borne far more than her fair share of burden ever since the drop. Silva was aware of that and regretted it. Part of the problem stemmed from the fact that she was his CO, an extremely demanding position that could burn even the most capable officers out. But the truth was, McKay was a better leader than her peers, and evidenced by the fact that the hell jumpers would follow her anywhere, even into a pit that might be filled with life-devouring monstrosities. But everyone had their limits, even an officer like McKay, and the Major knew she was close to reaching them. He could see it in the grim contours of her once rounded face, the empty, staring eyes, and the set of her mouth. The problem wasn't one of strength. She was the toughest, most hardcore Marine he knew, but one of hope. Now, as he prepared to send her below, Silva knew she needed something real to fight for, something more than patriotism, something that would allow her to get at least one of the Marines to safety. That, plus the possibility that something could happen to him, lay behind the briefing that ensued. So Silva began. Go down, get the lay of the land, and see if you can slam the door on those bastards. 48 hours of flood-free operation would be ideal, but 24 would be sufficient, because we'll be out of here by then. McKay had been looking over Silva's shoulder, but the last sentence brought her eyes back to his. Silva saw the moment and knew he had connected. Out of here, sir. Where will we go? Home, Silva said confidently, to brass bands, medals, and promotions all around. Then, with the intel gathered here, we'll leave the opportunity to push the Covenant back into whatever hole they came from. And the flood, McKay asked, her eyes searching his face. What about them? They're going to die, Silva replied. The AIs managed to link up a few hours ago. It turns out that the chief is alive. Cortana is with him, and they're trying to rescue Keyes. Once they have him, they're going to rig the Autumn to blow. The explosion will destroy Halo and everything on it. I'm not a fan of the Spartan program, you know that, but I've got to give that bastard credit. He's one hell of a soldier. It sounds good, McKay said cautiously. But how do we get off before the ring blows? Ah, Silva replied. That's where my idea comes in. While you're down cleaning out the sewers, I'll be up on top, making the preparations necessary to take the Truth and Reconciliation away from the Covenant. She's space-worthy now, and Cortana can fly her. Or, if all else fails, we'll let Wellesley take a crack at it. It would be a stretch, but he might be able to pull it off. Imagine bringing back a Covenant cruiser packed with their technology and loaded with data on this ring world. The response would be incredible. The human race needs a victory right now, and we'll give them a big one. It was then, as McKay looked into the other officer's half-lit face, that she realized the extent to which raw ambition motivated her superior's actions, and knew that even if his wildest dreams were to come true, she wouldn't want any part of the glory that Silva sought. Just getting some Marines home alive, that would be reward enough for her. An old soldier's adage flashed across her mind. Never share a foxhole with a hero. Glory and promotion were fine, but right now, she'd settle for survival. Plain and simple. First, there was a loud clang, followed by the birth of 6 blue-white suns, which illuminated the inside surface of the shaft as they fell to the filth-encrusted floor below. Then the invaders dropped not one at a time down the stairs, as the infection forms might have assumed, but half a dozen all at once, dangling in ropes. They landed within seconds of each other, knelt with weapons at the ready, and faced outward. Each hell jumper wore a helmet equipped with 2 lights and a camera. With simple back and forth movements of their heads, the soldiers created overlapping scans of the walls, which were transmitted up to the grating above, and from there to the mesa. McKay stood on the grating, eyed the raw footage of the portable monitor, and saw that 4 large arches penetrated the perimeter of the shaft and would need to be sealed in order to prevent access to the circular stairway. There was no sign of the flood. "Okay," the officer said. "We have 4 holes to seal. I want those plugs in the bottom of the shaft 30 from now. I'm going down." Even as McKay spoke and dropped into the hole, which had been cut in the center of the grate, Wellesley was calculating the exact dimensions of each arch so that the Navy techs could fabricate metal plugs that could be lowered into the bottom of the shaft, manhandled into position, and welded into place. Within a matter of minutes, computer-generated outlines were lasered onto metal plates, torches were lit, and the cutting had begun. McKay felt her boots touch solid ground and took her first look around. Now finally able to see the surroundings with her own eyes, the company commander realized that a bas-relief mural circled the lower part of the shaft. She wanted to go look at it, to run her fingers across the grime-caked images recorded there, but she knew she couldn't, not without compromising the defensive ring and placing herself in jeopardy. "Contact," one of the Marines said urgently. "I saw something move." "Hold your fire," McKay said cautiously, her voice echoing off the walls. "Conserve ammo until we have clear targets." As soon as she'd given the hold fire order, the flood gushed out into the shaft. McKay screamed, "Now, pull!" and 7 well-anchored winches jerked the entire team into the air out of reach. The Marines fired as they ascended. One hell jumper screamed curses as combat form who was leading the charge. The loudmouth Marine dropped his clip, loaded a fresh one into his rifle, and shouldered the weapon to resume fire. The combat form he'd been shooting at leaped 15 meters into the air, wrapped his legs around the Marine's waist, and caved in the side of the soldier's head with a rock. Then, with the fallen Marine's assault weapon slung over his shoulder, the creature climbed the rope like an oversized monkey and raced for the platform above. Lister, who still stood on the grating above, aimed his pistol straight down, put 3 rounds through the top of the combat form's skull, saw the form fall backwards into the milling mass below, and watched it disappear under a tide of alien flesh. "Let's move, people," the non-com said. "Raise the bait and drop the bombs." Energy bolts stuttered upward as the winches whirred. The hell jumpers rose, and 20 grenades fell through the grating and into the mob below. Not fragmentation grenades, which would have thrown shrapnel up at the hell jumpers, but plasma grenades, which burned as the flood congregated around them. Then went off in quick succession. They vaporized most of the gibbering monsters and left the rest vulnerable to a round of gunfire and a second dose of grenades. 10 minutes later, word came down that the plugs were ready, and a larger combat team was sent down, followed by 4 teams of techs. The arches were blocked without incident. The shaft was sealed, and the grating was repaired. Not forever, but for the next day or so, and that was all that mattered. The Master Chief arrived at the top of the gravity lift and fought his way through a maze of passageways and compartments occupied by Flood and Covenant alike. He rounded the corner and saw an open hatch ahead. "It looks like the shuttle bay," Cortana commented. "We should be able to reach the control room from the 3rd level." The CNI link that Cortana followed served to deliver a new message from the captain. The voice was weak and sounded slurred. "I gave you an order, soldier. Now pull out." "He's delirious," Cortana said. "In pain. We have to find him." "Pull out. I gave you an order, soldier." The thought echoed in what was left of Keyes and his ravaged mind. The invading presence descended. It could tell this was nearly expended. no more energy left to fight. It pushed in on the memories that the creature so jealously guarded and recoiled at the sudden resistance, a defiance of terrible strength. Keys clutched at the last of his vital memories, and inside his mind, where there was no one but he and the creature that attempted to absorb him, screamed, "No!" Death, held in abeyance for so long, refused to rush in, slowly, like the final drops of water from a recently closed faucet. His life force was absorbed. With the memory of the voice to spur him on, the Master Chief made his way onto a gallery over the shuttle bay, found that a pitched battle was in progress, and lobbed 2 grenades into the center of the conflict. They had the desired effect, but also signaled the human's presence, and the flood came like iron filings drawn to a magnet. The flood onslaught was intense, and the Spartan was forced to retreat into the passageway, whence he had come, in order to concentrate the targets by some time and reload his weapons. The pitched firefight ended, and he sprinted for the far side of the gallery and passed through an open hatch. He fought his way up to the next level of the gallery, where the flood appeared to be holding a convention at the far end of a walkway. The chief was fresh out of grenades by then, which meant he had to clear the path the hard way. A carrier form exploded and sent a cluster of combat forms crashing into the ground. The burst carrier spewed voracious infection forms in every direction and collapsed as one of the fallen combat forms hopped forward, dragging a broken leg behind him, hands clutching a grenade as if it were a bouquet of flowers. The Spartan backed away, fired a series of 10-round bursts, and gave thanks when the grenade exploded. The carrier had given him an idea. When they blew, they went up in a big way. A second of the creature scuttled into view, and he made its ungainly way forward, accompanied by a wave of infection forms and 2 more combat forms. He used his pistol scope to survey the combat form and was gratified that they fit the bill. Each carried plasma grenades. He stepped into view, and the combat forms instantly vaulted high into the air. As soon as their feet left the deck, the chief dropped and fired directly at the carrier. Soon the Spartan aim was perfect. The Spartan's aim was perfect. As soon as they passed over the carrier, it burst and ignited the plasma grenades the combat forms carried. They all went up in a blue-white flash of destructive energy. "The control room should be this way," Cortana said, as he charged ahead, eager to keep them moving in the right direction. He moved fast, advancing across the blood-slicked floor, and followed Cortana's new nav coordinates toward the still distant hatch. He passed through the opening, followed the corridor to an intersection, took a right and left, and was passing through the door when a horrible groan was heard over the link. "The captain," Cortana said. "His vitals are fading. Please, Chief, hurry." The Spartan charged into the passageway packed with both Covenant and Flood, and sprayed the tangle of bodies with bullets. He kept running at top speed, sprinting past enemies and ignoring their hasty snapshots. Time was of the essence. Keys was fading fast. He made it to the CNI carrier wave source, the cruiser's control room. The lighting was subdued with hints of blue and reflections of metal surfaces. Thick, sturdy columns framed the ramps that led to the elevated platform where something strange stood. He thought it was a carrier at first glance, but soon realized that the creature was far too large for that. It boasted a fleshy material that connected it to the ceiling overhead like thick, gray-green spider webs. There were no signs of opposition, not yet anyway, which left him free to make his way up the ramp with his rifle at the ready. As he moved closer, the chief realized that the new flood form was huge. If it was aware of the human's presence, the creature gave no sign of it, and continued to study a large hollow panel as if committing the information displayed there to memory. No human life signs detected, Cortana observed cautiously. She paused and added, the captain's life sign just stopped. Damn, what about the CNI, he asked, still transmitting. Then the chief noticed a bulge in the monster's side and realized that he was looking at an impression of a naval officer's grotesque, distorted face. The AI said, the captain, he's one of them. The Spartan realized then that he already knew that he had known. He had known it ever since he'd seen Jenkins's video, but was unwilling to accept it. We can't let the Flood get off this ring, Cortana said desperately. You know what he'd expect, what he'd want us to do. Yes, the chief thought. I know my duty. They need to blow the Autumn's engines and destroy Halo and the Flood. To do that, they need the captain's neural implants. The Master Chief drew his arm back, formed his hand into a stiff-fingered armored shovel, and made use of the enormous strength to plunge the crude instrument into the Flood form's bloated body. There was momentary resistance as he pushed his way through the creature's skin and penetrated the captain's skull, to enter the half-dissolved brain that lay within.